Hey folks, thanks for coming. Thanks for showing up. I know the weather's not the best today. I think we can all be grateful that we're not doing it outdoors this year. Can we? What does everybody think about that? Should we move this outdoors right now? I brought an umbrella. I don't know if it's big enough for everybody, but we do have a big tent though. We got the big tent for legalization. We have the left, we got the right, we got the whole spectrum covered for this big tent for legalization and ending prohibition. So I'd ask everybody to kind of move up if you could, since we're not overwhelming this space right now. And I guess I'm going to warm us up a little bit. I'm Tom Gallagher. I'm with Minnesota NORML, and we thought we would do an event indoors this year at the Rotunda here, rather than outdoors as we usually have done in the past. We started in 2011, Minnesota NORML did. But we also know that we have a lot of partners and allies in the movement to end prohibition. And we've got some representatives from most groups. And we also have some lawmakers here, or are going to be here. I don't believe they're here yet, but they will be, to speak about these issues. And as you may already know, there's a lot of issues within our main issue category of legalization and any prohibition. So one, probably all of us would agree, or at least most of us here would agree, that we would like cannabis to be legal like tomatoes, the tomato model, right? So that's what we would like, but and some of us are really, are fixed on that, but some of us are willing to help everybody in our big society kind of turn their minds around to learn more and understand better about cannabis and what it's really all about, and to take some smaller steps along the way to get to the ultimate destination that we want to arrive at. So speaking of that, so we have over the years supported a constitutional amendment that would basically embed the tomato model of legalization into the Minnesota Constitution. Last year, we had some great leadership from Ryan Winkler, who was the leader of the Minnesota House, the DFL leader of the House, and he helped champion a bill, HF 600, which was a comprehensive, or is a comprehensive bill to legalize marijuana, not like tomatoes, but hopefully more like beer and wine. So that it would be highly regulated and taxed, but there was a lot of complicated, well maybe not complicated, but a lot of provisions to legalize marijuana in a comprehensive way that would be very practical and workable right away from the day that the enactment took effect. And the Minnesota House did pass HF 600, which was fantastic, an historic event. Unfortunately, the leadership in the Minnesota Senate basically stonewalled it, and it didn't go anywhere with them. They didn't want it to go anywhere, and since they had the majority in the Minnesota Senate, the Republican leadership there, it did not go anywhere. And so we at Minnesota NORML looked at that and thought, wow, that's not good. We could say other words that I won't even say right now, but we were unhappy about it, to say the least. But we're resilient. So we're going to come, when the Republican leadership of the Senate, Minnesota Senate, said they weren't going to allow a vote on HF 600 in the Senate, and we thought it had a good chance of passing the Minnesota Senate if it were allowed to get a vote. So this is a leadership issue where, as you may know, in the legislature, there are some issues with sometimes the leadership sort of hijacks control and overcomes the will of the people that way. So arguably that's what happened here, because we think it would have passed the Senate when we count the votes. But people could disagree about that, but we thought we had a good chance. But we'll never know because they didn't allow that to happen. But one thing they said in their press conferences, and Curtis Hanna, who is our lobbyist, has, I think, maybe a dozen video clips of Republican Senate leadership saying to the press and, you know, publicly on video that, well, we're against legalization of marijuana, but we would be willing to take a look at decriminalization and penalty reduction. And then he said that, they kept saying that. That was kind of their pitch was, nope, not legalization, but, you know, decriminalization and penalty reduction. We may be willing to do something there. Let's take a look at it. Let's get a serious proposal on the table so we can look at that. So guess what some of us at Minnesota Normal decided to do when we heard that? We decided, oh, well, okay. Here, Kurt Hanna, our lobbyist, led that effort to put together some legislation with the help of lawmakers and some of us to do a series of bills that were, you know, maybe sometimes we call them baby step bills, but bills that would fix the decriminalization law and also to fix some of the aspects of the medical cannabis law, and also some issues with the hemp law that arose in the last year. So these are not legalization, but they are very important because, you know, for example, right now in Minnesota, if you have 1.5 ounces or less of plant-formed marijuana and you're not in a car, that's a petty misdemeanor. You can't be arrested and you can't go to jail. But if you have 0.5 gram of the resinous form of marijuana, or, you know, THC, wax, whatever you want to call it, or, you know, 2 gummy bears that weigh 0.5 gram, that's a felony. That's a felony right now in Minnesota, and you'll be, and the police can arrest you, and then you go to court, and you can go to prison for that. And by the way, people tell me, I'm a criminal defense lawyer by day, by the way, so I can tell you from personal experience, and also anybody can go look at the Minnesota Sentencing Guidelines Commission reports to the legislature every year, and what you're going to see is more than 500 people, or about 500 people per year, are convicted of marijuana felonies in Minnesota, and about 50 per year, or actually it's 54 per year, are going to prison, Minnesota prison. So I'm going to leave it there for now because I hear we have Representative Rena Moran here, who's been a fantastic lawmaker on this issue.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. So, there we go. So I am State Representative Rena Moran, representing District 65A right here in St. Paul. And I also chair the House Committee on Ways and Means. And I want to thank you all so much for being here today. As I plan to step away from the state legislature after this year, I can't help but look back on my very first time as part of this movement to legalize adult use cannabis in Minnesota, and the progress that you have made since that first time that I showed up. So thank you for never, ever giving up. And I remember several years back when this group was just beginning to gather at the state capitol, and I'm proud to have been on the cutting edge with you. Can you believe that? That's the cutting edge. To continue to fight to legalize adult use marijuana. We got to do it. Support among Minnesotans have grown all across the state too, but it didn't happen overnight. And so I remember a few rallies on 420 where there would be those who laughed either as they passed by the rotunda or on social media. There were plenty of people in the halls of this Capitol who didn't take this issue seriously. I know how difficult those days might have been. And slowly but surely, by showing up and making your voices heard, you were all able to reshape the discussion about this issue. No longer are those who support cannabis legalization seen as on the fringe, all right? Instead, we are able to have important discussions about racial disparities that are absolutely impossible to ignore, and the damage caused through unnecessary interaction with the criminal justice system that can last and has lasted a lifetime. We were able to talk about how this issue is so much bigger than just legalizing a product. We were able to fight back against the outdated rhetoric that has empowered the failed criminal prohibition for so long, and we were able to change the entire narrative around this issue. Last year was an incredible movement when we, as the House Democrats, decided to move forward with a new approach to cannabis that will help Minnesotans have the brighter future that they deserve. We took the historic step forward to legalize adult-use cannabis in Minnesota. It is done. A move that I don't think any of the passerbys who laughed at some of my first rallies on 420 would have ever thought was possible. But here we are. Now, we know the bills didn't get into the governor's desk before because some state Republicans maintained their opposition. While we didn't win that last day, while we didn't win the day last year, that issue isn't going away. And believe me, we are continuing to march on and put piece by piece of this legislation together to move and legalize cannabis in the state of Minnesota. And I know for sure that none of you are going away. Am I right about this? You're not going away, are you? All right. It is critically important for elected officials to be responsive to the people that have the opportunity to serve. And we have to do this, as we know we've been doing with Governor Walz and the House DFLers in particular. We have heard your voices loud and clear. We listened to you, and we heard your input. We even acknowledge concerns from those who might not share our point of view. We've done everything necessary to put together a thoughtful framework for the legalization of cannabis in this state. And I know how hard change can be. I know it. It's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be quick, and it hasn't been quick. And I know how much easier it is for elected officials to stick to the status quo, especially when it comes to a complicated, controversial issue like this. It's time for the Senate Republicans and other elected officials at all levels to reject the status quo that has failed us for too long and finally legalize adult-use cannabis. And so I want you to know that even though this is my last term as a state representative by choice, that I want you to know I'm not going away. I am an ally in this fight until we do this, until we legalize cannabis marijuana, until we all have the right to smoke, so please continue to advocate and engage. Please continue to keep educating those elected to represent you, the people's voice, your voice, the people's voice. It matters. You matter. This issue matters, and let's do the right thing. So please continue to fight against this unjust, outdated law, and I stand with you, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Moran. I'm Pat Bradley. I am chair of Minnesota NORML, despite what this tag says. I've been promoted, and why is a good question. We next have Representative West, who's with the GOP, GOP.
Thank you. So, prohibition leads to increased crime and violence. That's what happens when you prohibit something. We saw it with alcohol prohibition. It led to more death and criminal activity. So from a public safety aspect, if you're going to prohibit something, well, it better be dang dangerous. It better lead to death. And that's not what we have with cannabis. You look at alcohol, you look at tobacco, they kill over 100,000 people a year. Cannabis, 0. You look at caffeine. Caffeine kills 92 people a year. Cannabis, 0. So if you're going to prohibit something that's not killing people, why are you prohibiting it? It makes no sense. It's completely devoid of reason. So it's long past time that we do this. Now, there are a lot of my colleagues who don't necessarily think we should go recreational marijuana. However, I think they would find their constituents, even if they're from, rural Minnesota, for example, don't nearly think the way they think they think. You look at the polls, it goes steadily. More and more Americans, more and more Minnesotans every single year support legalizing recreational marijuana. It's not dangerous, and keeping it prohibited makes it dangerous. So if we're going to pretend like we're making law with reason, although that rarely happens, we have to end prohibition. And that is something that is going to happen either way. And what I want to communicate to activists, people who are trying to get their legislators to finally legalize it, is, well, one, nobody will agree with you if you yell at them. So approach even somebody you think might be a moron, approach them kindly. And I think the most effective argument is this will happen eventually. It will. Nobody disputes that. Do we want to make a good law or let the federal government do it for us? So like a lot of Republicans, who are generally the ones who oppose recreational marijuana, would say, well, oh, no, I will not support it, no way, no how. But if it's going to happen anyway, wouldn't you want Republicans to be involved in writing that law? And especially when a poorly written law will just lead to more crime. Because if we tax it at astronomical rates, we're not going to get rid of the black market, and all the benefits will basically be lost. So we should, both Republicans and Democrats should support ending prohibition. It's safer to end prohibition. It'll generate money for the state and will decrease criminal activity, which is something literally everyone supports. So please go out, talk to your legislators, whoever they are, and communicate, well, hey, this is going to happen anyways, regardless of whether you oppose it or not. It's going to happen eventually. How about you be involved in the process of making a good cannabis legalization law rather than just opposing it outright forever? Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Representative West. I think that demonstrates that we do have bipartisan support. We have Republican support. And speaking of which, we have a candidate for State House on the Republican side, Sean Holster, who we said we'd give a couple minutes to. Come on, Sean.
Thank you. Thank you for the time. And that would be for State Senate, for Senate District 63, South Minneapolis. As a Republican and the endorsed Republican, and as someone who has been interacting personally in the addiction and recovery and mental illness field for the last 3 years, and public safety being very important to me, I do not see the point in continuing prohibition. It costs us incredibly more in Department of Correction dollars and other law enforcement dollars than any sort of legalization, any form of that would take. I am concerned with legalizing it in the correct manner. I don't want to see it as being a giant gift to the pharmaceutical companies, just like the pharmaceutical companies that gave us the opioid crisis. That's bad policy. I personally don't see why it shouldn't be treated as a cottage industry, just like microbrews, just like any other adult recreational activity. If you're bringing minors into it, yeah, penalties. I don't want kids playing with drugs, period. Same thing with alcohol. I don't see why we can't just fold it into the existing system as it stands. No new regulatory agency, and if legalized before I get into the Senate, if I get into the Senate, I will definitely work for it once I am there, and it'll just give me another thing to try to drop taxes on in the long run. So thank you very much.
And next, we're going to go to our activist side of things, Layli Fatahi. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Layli Fatahi. I am the campaign manager for Minnesotans for Responsible Marijuana Regulation. We are a statewide, multi-partisan campaign organized by leaders from state and local units of government, a broad range of nonprofit organizations, Minnesota's business community, organized labor, and more. And we are working alongside other advocacy groups like Minnesota NORML and Sensible Change Minnesota to end Minnesota's failed cannabis prohibition laws and replace them with a comprehensive framework for cultivation, manufacture, sale, possession, use, and taxation of cannabis that prioritizes public health, public safety, and social justice. When a government policy threatens the health and safety of our communities, it is the government's responsibility to fix it. When a government policy has the effect of creating enduring injustice, the government is also responsible to correct that injustice and to redress its harms. And that's the situation at hand with Minnesota's cannabis laws. Cannabis prohibition has failed to achieve every single one of its stated public policy goals. It has taken a product that is objectively safer for the public than alcohol or cigarettes and driven it into an underground market that lacks any consumer safety standards and is readily accessible to children. And not only has it failed to keep our communities safer, it has instead unjustifiably criminalized people, especially people of color, and disenfranchised them from being able to access employment, housing, and other basic needs, all for consuming or selling a product that is already legal in many other states. Now, we know that the majority of Minnesotans, like the majority of all Americans, support cannabis legalization. That's been shown in poll after poll. But we've spent the last several years having conversations with Minnesotans from all persuasions and from all corners of the state about cannabis legalization to understand why those who support it do and why those who oppose it don't. And what we're increasingly hearing is that more and more Minnesotans simply recognize that cannabis is not as harmful as they were once led to believe. We've found that Minnesotans from all walks of life are questioning what they've been told are the facts about the dangers of cannabis and the necessity of prohibition. And they're questioning those facts because they simply do not align with the truth. They're questioning why we are spending billions of dollars on a system of prohibition that is utterly failing from keeping people from using cannabis, including children. They're wondering why the top interest groups spending money to oppose legalization are the private prison industry and the pharmaceutical lobby. They're questioning why the privately funded research touted by anti-legalization groups has been discredited by experts for presenting misleading conclusions from incomplete data against a growing mountain of rigorous peer-reviewed public health research that shows that there has been no increase in vehicle fatalities, a drop in adolescent cannabis use, and an average drop of 23% in opioid deaths in states that have legalized cannabis. And still other Minnesotans are thinking about how, given rapidly changing public opinion in support of legalization, that legalization is inevitable in Minnesota, and that if that's going to happen, we should make sure that it happens in a way that benefits rather than excludes Minnesota's farmers and small business owners, that keeps children safe from being advertised or sold cannabis products, that maintains the safety of our roads, and that redresses the disproportionate impact that prohibition has had on communities of color. It may be inevitable that cannabis legalization passes, but it is not inevitable that it will be soon or that it will be good. And time is of the essence. Every day that we fail to legalize is another day of lost opportunity for Minnesotans and active harm to communities. Today, you're going to see a lot of elected officials posting about their support of legalization. But pay attention to the ones that are not posting. Call them, email them, show up at their town halls, ask them to explain their lack of support, and remind them that session ends in May, and right after that is November. Thank you.
Thank you, Laylee, and we now have been visited by Senator Jim Abler.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm Jim Abler. I'm the senator from Anoka. And so I'm here as a friend of the topic of being fair and criminal things that have happened over the years that don't make sense anymore. And Representative Gomez and I are the authors of this piece of legislation that would just simply make sense now. You know, if you're, there is a tremendous amount of racial disparity in how the arrests are made, even in towns that should know better, like Minneapolis and others, like what is that? But sometimes the laws just don't make sense. And the move has been to make it less criminal, and I'll admit that I'm not right there with you on legalization, just to be honest with you all. I'm nervous about, well, a lot of things, but along the way, there's some things that should change. And I want to encourage you as folks coming to visit your capital that the place belongs to you. We assert that as people in government that we represent you all, and there's a lot of different perspectives on this particular topic of what to do with marijuana, but your voice really matters. And finding people that agree with you partway is a good thing. And people who disagree with you altogether, this is America. And so your voice matters. It should not be simply ignored. And so you may have topics you care about besides this particular legalization topic or decriminalization topic. You may care about schools and roads and climate and clean water and those things as well. And your voice is important on those as well. So I urge you, as you get involved in your government, to appreciate all the parts it brings to in so many areas. But for instance, if you have a bong and it's got some water in it, they use that volume of water as like how many pounds of something you might have had. That's ridiculous. And there's a number of things like that which just don't make any sense. They're totally irrational. It's time to catch up with those laws so that if you're running around with a pickup with a ton of it in the back, that's a different kind of person than a person running around. And some of you are going like, whoa, yeah, sorry, just you can dream. But it's different than somebody who has a couple joints in their pocket. And certainly on the topic of the medicinal qualities, there is so much research about the value of that, and it's way time for the feds to catch up with the states in allowing such as that. And just there's so many, it's irrational. And as a person who's had plenty of experience with this product over the years, which is part of my reticence to make it all the way more available, some of the things just don't make sense. When I was in college, if you had a seed in Canada, you were going to jail for a seed. And that was an evidence of the time. A lot of these laws that we have haven't caught up with that. And so I, for one, think that there should be fairness in the laws and judiciousness in how we charge and doing the right thing by the right people. And if it's a crime, it's a crime, but if it's really petty, then let's call it petty like it really is. So anyway, that's what I got to offer you, but I want to encourage you, don't stop with just coming today. Come back and talk about health care, talk about issues with nursing homes. Can seniors find places to live, people with disabilities? Can we have, how are the kids getting educated? What is the future of America that you represent, part of the present state of America? So anyway, God bless. Welcome to your government. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Senator Abler. Next, we have John Jones with Minnesota Veterans for Cannabis.
How's it going, guys? First of all, I'd like to thank all those veterans out there that serve this great nation from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. I won't bore you with all the statistics that were just thrown at your way. We all know what they are. I would just like to encourage our legislators to dig into those and take them serious, because we sure do. PTSD among veterans is a big thing right now. It's going up. It's not going down. It's a proven fact. Cannabis helps combat those symptoms. Without cannabis, I'm diagnosed severe PTSD. I would not be standing here before you today. So I urge those legislators to take that in consideration. Also, I'd like to urge those veterans out there that are having a tough time trusting in the system and believing that change can happen at this place. Rural Minnesotans suffer from that greatly, and I would like to encourage all of you to come out here, get engaged with somebody somehow, and tell Minnesota how you feel. Yeah, with that, I'd like to thank you.
Thank you, John. Next, we're going to have Kurt Hanna and Minnesota Normal this session at the legislature as our lobbyist.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. My name is Curtis Hanna, and as Pat just mentioned, I'm the first Minnesota Normal contracted lobbyist here down at the legislatures, and as new as of this year. So it's exciting stuff. We got some momentum going on our side, and I'm here today to give a little bit of a summary of how things are going so far in this legislative session. It's obviously fun and good to have rallies outside where we're playing music and having a good time, but in all honesty, the way that our laws get changed are oftentimes seen as quite mundane and boring and tedious, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of conversations. So my update today might be a little bit dry. However, I hope you stick with me, because I think we're doing some amazing stuff this year, and I'm quite excited about it. So obviously, HF 600, full legalization, passed the Minnesota House last year. Almost all of the DFL voted for it. We also had 6 Republican House representatives vote for it. However, in the Senate, which is majority Republican, we have unfortunately yet to get a single Senate Republican to come out in support of full legalization of marijuana. So that has put us in the position where we have had to try to fight and advocate for lesser reforms that are extremely important. However, they don't get to the full goal that we're trying to seek. But fighting for those incremental progressions, in my opinion and in the opinion of Minnesota Normal, is extremely important, and that's why we're doing this work. So I will say that there was one humongous victory that we achieved, not through the legislature, but 9 days ago, due to administrative lobbying. We got it so the Minnesota Board of Pharmacy has declared that THC products that are derived from hemp are now legal to possess and to purchase in the state of Minnesota. So that's a huge win. Yeah. Woo, woo. So, unfortunately though, this is a 1-year temporary order. So it is something that we need the legislature to codify so that it goes into effect and progresses forward, hopefully indefinitely. And luckily, we have a bill that is planning to do just that. The bill is HF 3595. It has passed through multiple committees. It has bipartisan support. It has 3 Senate authors that are Republicans in the Senate. And things are looking good. We have a month left in session, and we're expecting that to hopefully be passed into law. Additionally, we have 2 omnibus bills. So Minnesota is a little bit odd the way our legislature works in that we often take the bills from a certain committee and we lump them all together into a humongous bill. And 2 of those bills, their first engrossments just got published yesterday, and they include a whole lot of cannabis law reform, which I'm going to review for you right now. So the Public Safety Omnibus Bill, HF 4608, has the bill that Senator Abler, who just spoke, has been authoring in the Senate. And to go over the substance of the bill real quickly, it extends Minnesota's decriminalization laws so that it doesn't only apply to the flower or the bud form of cannabis, but it also applies to THC products, so that if you have 8 grams or less of those products, you are given a petty misdemeanor citation as opposed to a felony charge, which is the current situation we're under today. Additionally, this bill makes it so you no longer would have your driver's license suspended if you get caught with a small personal amount of cannabis, which is the law today. Also, if you are given a felony charge for possession of 8 grams or less of a THC product right now, you are deemed to be committing a crime of violence in Minnesota, which comes with it a lifetime ban from exercising your Second Amendment civil rights. And this bill would stop that going forward, and it would allow individuals that have these felony charges on their record to petition the courts to restore their Second Amendment rights. Additionally, medical cannabis patients from outside of Minnesota that come here to visit loved ones or to vacation are not allowed to bring their medicine with them under current law, and they cannot purchase cannabis from Minnesota's dispensaries right now. And this bill would allow an affirmative defense. So if someone is caught that has a valid medical cannabis license in another state, they can go to court and assert to the court that they have a legitimate medical purpose for the possession of cannabis, and if they're successful in asserting and providing that documentation, their charges are waived. Now, this is a long list, which is a good thing, but the amount of support that we have seen for this specific bill is pretty crazy. I'll go through the list of organizations that are on our side on this one. The Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus, LEAP, which is Law Enforcement Action Partnership, Drug Policy Reform Organization, Sensible Change, a national organization, which is a libertarian think tank, the Reason Foundation, the National Organization of Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition, or RAMP, the R Street Institute, another libertarian think tank at the national level, the Republican Liberty Caucus of Minnesota, an official affiliate of the Minnesota Republican Party, the Minnesota Catholic Conference, Americans for Prosperity, essentially every single member of the Minnesota DFL, which is a huge thing. I've yet to meet any of them that are not in support of elected officials, that is. And increasingly, we're seeing more and more elected Republicans come out in favor of this piece of legislation, specifically Senator Abler, who just spoke, and Senator Coran, who is co-authoring a mirror bill in the Senate. And lastly, Senator Benson, Gazelka, and Pratt have all said to me personally that they support a reform of this sort and don't believe that possession of small personal amounts of THC products should be a felony in Minnesota any longer. So wrapping up, there's also a fair bit of movement on trying to reform Minnesota's medical cannabis law. Unfortunately, we have one of the most restrictive programs in the entire United States. However, that has been bolstered with a couple of reforms that have already gone into place. Last year, the addition of flower in our medical program has gone through, and as of March 1st, Minnesota patients are able to purchase flower, which is drastically cheaper than purchasing the products that have been available for the last 7 years. Additionally, the Department of Health has allowed the addition of edibles, which will be going into effect on August 1st, so not too awful far from now. And some upcoming reforms that we're hoping to achieve are in the the House Omnibus Bill. The first of which is ending the Minnesota medical cannabis duopoly. Right now, we only have two industries that are able to, two companies that are able to participate in the Minnesota medical cannabis industry, and we're hoping to extend that to at least a total of 4, if not to a total of 10. Signing up for the medical cannabis program right now costs $200 that you have to pay to the state annually. This bill would reduce it to $40 fee. Also, Minnesota members of tribes that live in the state of Minnesota currently have issues dealing with the medical cannabis program. They actually have a medical cannabis program of their own, and we're looking for a compact to be passed into law so that their medical cannabis program is viewed as legitimate under Minnesota's state statutes. And with that, I am going to pass it on to the next speaker, but thank you so much for all of your support. My heart is warmed by all of you showing up today, and honestly, the more that we get engaged, we really can make a difference. So thanks again.
Thank you, Curtis Hanna. Excellent, excellent person on our issues. I'm going to ask people, anybody here, if they have any questions that they want to raise in a minute, but before I do that, I do want to mention that Minnesota Normal, we do have a monthly meeting on Saturday at 11 at 4200 Cedar Avenue in Minneapolis. If you're on Facebook or Meetup, you can also see the meeting notice there. And we would encourage everybody to come and to join us as we continue to work on these issues. Does anybody have any questions here, sir? So the question was, why is marijuana taxed at the state level but federally illegal? Correct. Well, there's kind of that's a complicated issue. It's hard to explain or to wrap that up in a short sound bite.
Cannabis, you can't tax it. It's for the people. It saved my life. Served the 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marine Division. Designated point.
Well, one thing that I could comment on is that at the federal level, there are 2 legislative proposals for legalization of marijuana right now. One of them called the MORE Act, which has a heavy federal taxation built into it. I think it's 20–30%. Then there's And then there's a Republican legalization proposal by Representative Nancy Mace, I believe, of South Carolina. I believe that one has like a 3% tax rate on that.
My brothers that are veterans that are committing suicide, how are you going to save them? Because they want to know.
That I'm not sure I have the answer to that one.
Neither do I, but I'm just looking for the answer of love.
Okay.
Love's what cannabis is.
Anybody else have a question that we might give a... How can we donate? Okay. If you want to donate money for the cause you can go to our website at minnnormal.org, minnormal.org. The join page to become a annual member, $50 a year, or you can go on our Twitter page right now. Pinned to the top is a tweet with the link to our Act Blue funding link, where you can donate any amount that you feel like, and that would help us. Right now, we need money for our lobbying effort and our other organizational needs. So we would appreciate any help that we could get that way to ramp up the fight here to legalize. Any other questions anybody might have here today? I mean, I think that when it comes to legalization, sometimes people wonder, well, what are the arguments against legalization? What do the people say who are opposed? What's the other side of the story there? And that's important to pay attention to, even though sometimes we don't always want to hear it. But sometimes people say, well, I've noticed that in recent years, some of the reefer madness claims have quieted down. People have stopped talking about those a lot because I think they've been disproven scientifically. National Normal on their website, they do a pretty good job almost daily of knocking down another false narrative that's scientifically not supported about cannabis. And so what people are left with after that is people will say things like, I don't like the smell. I don't like the smell of marijuana. It's obnoxious to me. It smells bad. I live in an apartment and I smell marijuana in the hallway and it makes me sick. I'm allergic to it and it's driving me crazy. And I say to them, well, you know, I don't know. I don't think we should put people in prison because of a bad odor, which is what we're doing right now, if that's the reason for it. Because I remember when I was a kid going to a baseball game, a Twins game, and some guy's smoking a big fat cigar, and I was choking, you know. I didn't like the smell of cigars. And since then I've smoked a couple cigars, but not my favorite thing still. But I don't think we should be putting people in prison because cigars smell bad, right? Maybe we should just do some other thing to ask them to please don't put your smell into my air, you know, at the Twins game or in the apartment building. Another thing that people say is it sends the wrong message to the kids, to the young people. I think if we think about that a little, I think that's kind of an off-the-cuff reaction, but if we look a little deeper into it, we got to look at the flip side of that is what kind of message are we sending young people when we're locking up, we're arresting people, we're asking our law enforcement officers to ignore violent crime, just forget about those rapists and those gangbangers and those carjackers, and spend your time, you know, picking on teenagers or young adults who have marijuana, and you know, build cases on them, bust through their door with a SWAT team, arrest them, put them in jail, put 50 of them per year in Minnesota State prisons that we're all paying taxes. That's not cheap to keep somebody in prison for a year, or much less 50 people a year. And then, you know, some of those people are parents, some of those people are mothers and fathers, and they're being orphaned. So we're asking our police and our criminal justice system to lock people up in prison every year and create dozens of orphans, people with no parents anymore, because marijuana, because it's, you know, what kind of message does that send if that's our response, where we don't like something, so we're going to send a message we don't like.
Finally, here at 11, we may finally have the answer as to why the chicken crossed the road, because it was being chased by the police. This is video from Justin in Rochester. You can see that a chicken is on the run from a police officer. It's unclear how the chicken got loose. Luckily, no one was hurt, and the officer was able to capture this wayward bird.